Conflict alters public space in various forms. The transformation of cities is both echoed through and manifested in their public spaces, which simultaneously transform to accommodate immediate conditions and emerging needs. What used to be a functional square, for instance, might suddenly be brought into a bigger conflict and be transformed into an urban frontier. It might become an arena of opposing forces, or a target point, or a place designated for public executions. Or it might become deserted, a no man's land, under the threat of shelling and treacherous bullets. In some cases, it is used as an extension of the propaganda machine, an instrument through which authoritarian states communicate false narratives. Moreover, public spaces might acquire an outstanding symbolic meaning due to certain events and become associated with distinct memories. In the Arab world, and subsequent to the Arab Spring, several public spaces turned iconic. In Syria, the largest square in the capital Damascus, Al-Umayyin, and the adjacent Mazah highway were used as grounds for pro-government marches. The second largest square, Al-Abbasiyin, was closed for years due to shelling. In Aleppo, the University Square witnessed both partisan and opposition demonstrations. Saadallah al-Jabiri, the city's main square, became a target and marked the division line. In Homs, the new clock square became the local symbol of revolution, in which people gathered for demonstration, the first being the demonstration of the square. Associated with it are the memories of the carnage of the new clock. In Raqqa, during the occupation of the Islamic State, public space was rarely used by the population. Rather, it was to exhibit fear and intimidation. Soon after armed conflict ended, the requalification of public spaces became a priority, crucial to the integrity of the official narrative. Syria is fine. The Syrian government was quick to install love monuments, carefully placed in iconic settings to channel resilience. Damascus witnessed the demilitarization of its public spaces. Checkpoints were slowly dismantled, roads and major roundabouts were reopened. In Aleppo, a monument that reads "Believe in Aleppo" was installed at the Citadel's Plaza. More recently, Al-Hatab Square, which still lies in the middle of ruins, was rehabilitated and a Christmas market was held. Raqqa's case, however, is quite different, having a different governing system represented by the civil council and a group of local and international NGOs. Approaches lean more towards recuperating normalcy and reactivating the city. Raqqa underwent major political shifts during the war and became, at the time, the capital of the Islamic State. Its strategic location rendered it desirable for parties to fight over the territory. Unforgettable atrocities took place, leaving the city in ruins, as about 80% of its built mass was damaged and half of its inhabitants displaced. Nonetheless, the city is now gradually recovering its public spaces. However, the pace of these interventions left us, the authors, in shock, wondering about their reasoning and impacts. To assess the efficacy and outcome of these interventions, 10 semi-structured interviews with locals were conducted. Questions intended to evoke their residents' memory, as they were encouraged to recite and list the places that were requalified and to reflect on interventions and on whether further enhancements are needed. The majority of the interviewees agreed with the places selected for requalification by the actors. The perception of these interventions demonstrate a pattern that starts with shock and doubt at the moment of announcement, with skepticism on the allocation of funds for such projects, then, after implementation, rejection turned into acceptance and further demand for more interventions. However, shared concerns were raised upon problematic behaviors of harassment, drug abuse, and vandalism. The lack of security measures and insufficient light elements pose serious threats, especially for women and children. Specific social groups, furthermore, constitute a disturbing element for locals, namely IDPs and corrupt youth, commonly blamed for the aforementioned behaviors. Also, the lack of management and regular maintenance was raised. The most mentioned places were Al-Naim Roundabout and Al-Rashid Park. Both are central and the most significant of their kind. Accordingly, they were selected for further assessment through analysis. Satellite images were consulted to detect the changes that took place as well as to spot and highlight design shortcomings conducive to the raised issues. Al-Naim roundabout is a key population hub, gathering space, and central attraction point. Its Arabic name Al-Naim translates into paradise. The roundabout is well known for its abundance of fast food shops, pastry and dessert stores, and cafes, boasting around 60 to 70 shops in total. The roundabout became associated with traumatic memories, as the Islamic State used it as a location for public executions. In light of these events, its name was changed to Al-Jahim roundabout, which means inferno. The Essential Services Program, funded by the United States Agency for International Development, carried out an intervention to erase the traumatic memories. It was the first location in the city to undergo requalification, with the aim of eliminating any trace of the terrorist group's presence. Consequently, the roundabout was completely redesigned. The intervention was successful in normalizing the place and neutralizing traumatic memories. The original name has been reclaimed with positive public perception. The square has regained its significance as a key venue for entertainment. However, some people still refuse to visit due to unresolved trauma. Moreover, it is not seen as a friendly or safe destination, particularly for women and families. Satellite images show that the original site planning was preserved as well as its shortcomings. The redesign of the roundabout aimed to alter the sense of place and channel an Abbasid identity. However, the roundabout remains dangerous with the lack of traffic safety. These issues expose the limited approach taken to restore normalcy, as opportunities for sustainable development were missed. Al-Rashid Park is a significant park in the city as it is the oldest, most well-known, and highly attended. The park is located in a key location near Al-Rashid High School. It is a popular destination for people due to its proximity to the souk. During the war, Al-Rashid Park was a crossing point, and many trees were damaged. Interventions were minimal and limited to maintenance work of tree plantation, wall and pavement restoration, and light provision. The requalification of the park was noticed by interviewees as the first location of intervention due to its significance. It is attended by various social groups. However, there are signs of polarization between locals and the incoming internally displaced persons who occupy the area that are commonly condemned for negative behavior. Satellite images show that the design was preserved. Entrances are poorly located and pose a traffic hazard. Another safety concern is the playground located at the southern corner near the entrance. The park's fencing and strict geometric design can limit movement and facilitate harassment or assault. Inadequate illumination and areas with high tree density may be used for drug use and undesired activities. These issues could have been addressed during requalification to enhance user safety and encourage attendance. Generally speaking, requalification projects have been limited to recovering landscape elements with little consideration for post- or pre-conflict issues. Their approaches are perceived as shy attempts to restore normalcy rather than instigate sustainable change. Complaints about execution quality, corruption, and lack of maintenance were also raised. One interviewee associated the vandalism and misuse of public space with the lack of social participation in decision-making and implementation, which in turn impacts the sense of ownership and belonging to these places. Participants had mixed responses when asked about society involvement. Some had not heard of any such efforts, while others mentioned limited surveys for the selection of intervention locations. Some participants felt that the lack of participation led to initial public rejection of the work, and others reported public demands being ignored. These observations expose limitations in the vision and approach of the interventions. The impact of requalification works on social cohesion was varied according to responses from interviewees. Some reported no impact, while others saw positive effects, especially in terms of introducing families and encouraging involvement in activities. However, the issue of cohesion between locals and IDPs was central to the discussion, with some expressing a lack of trust and others indicating polarization and spatial segregation. This highlights the intervention's failure to address pre- and post-war issues and create inclusive and attractive spaces for all. Finally, while the global understanding of public space has shifted from spaces designed to accommodate for traffic into active spaces occupied by the masses that serve as hubs for various activities, the local understanding is predominantly faulted and limited to it being more of a crossing point than a destination, a confined place that requires high security, gates and walls. However, we can argue that the Arab Spring has instigated a shift by recapturing the publicness of public spaces and turning them into contemporary sites of meaningful memory. Public space is now perceived as a potent political tool for the expression of values of democracy, freedom, and agonism. In this light, we argue that the responsibility of post-war processes is to build upon this shift, not only for the restoration of normalcy, but towards further development.